This is
You got me
Yassine,
full
welcome.
frame. Thank you
I've
very
got you
much.
on, and you're going to be doing a talk on Salat and the Dhikr link.
Yes, that's right. As I was just speaking just now, just before the camera was on, my approach is being fine-tuned, and with everybody's help here, I think we ought to be able to come to some sort of conclusion. When I was going through some of the study for this, what was actually happening was I was having different ideas, and I was being pulled in different ways. I come from a Sunni background, a Sunni Sufi background. So for me, Salat has always been a very, very personal thing. And it's been about developing a connection with God. What I've actually done is there's a contributor to the groups with the name of Quranists. And he wrote quite a lengthy article based on Salat. And I thought what I'll do is actually take a look at the article, take the bits which I find interesting, and then we can actually talk later on about those. So obviously I added peppered it out with a couple of my own comments, of course, but that's the way it is. So there's a question: without hadith, how do you do salat? All right. Now hadith is not just simply the books, canonized as we have them. So in essence, what we're saying there is, if you're just basing it purely on the Quran on its own in a vacuum, can we actually perform salat? And as we've heard from an earlier contributor there, that there are other ways of bringing Salat into the mix. It is a common question posed by traditionalists to Quranists Muslims, and what I personally think is, for traditionalists, it really needs to be rephrased. Without hadith, how do you do namaz? All right? And namaz is a physical set of rituals, which most of you know what they are. And you could also say that in a way, it's a defining action of Muslims in the world today. I mean, if you ever watch a movie and for some reason they've got a cut scene to Saudi Arabia or Turkey or something like that, it's always azan time. Every single time. Just to tell you, hey, hold on a minute, we're in a Muslim country here. So, it's not, everyone tends to get labeled in the same sense, right? Azan happens, the Muslims do their thing. All right? It is, in a way, a mark of a traditionalist, and some of us do come from that traditional background, so it's inevitable that some of that bias creeps into our studies, into our lives, to the extent that we may look for the same kind of practice. And we sometimes seek to prove it from the Quran. I mean, billions of people follow the similar sets of rituals, so where did this start from? Very important question, that, and I think I've come across the position about it being from Abraham before, but I've never actually studied it, and thanks very much for doing that, because my brain is actually working, thinking I need to readjust some of what I've written here. It is plausible that there's something that's been passed down from generation to generation and was a practice present at the time of the Prophet. Therefore, it is something which is already known and therefore does not require further explanation from the Quran. There is a problem with this, however. If it's a perfect system with preserved ideas, then these rituals should also be preserved and be tamper-proof. The problem is that there are differences in the physical aspects, number of cycles performed, etc., and therefore there is a possibility this hasn't actually been preserved. There is the argument, for example, the number of rakats are preserved numerically. I'm personally not convinced of that, because it's not something I've actually studied fully yet, but obviously I can't reject that. What I think we really need to do is really shed our ideas, purify ourselves of them, and start with a blank canvas. Now imagine we gave the Quran to a tribe of Arabic-speaking individuals which had no contact with the outside world, had never come across a Muslim ever before, and asked them, right, here's a Quran, go and practice it. The question is how they deal with that. Let's pretend that we're this tribe, and ultimately I think this is what we really need to do. We are this tribe, and we need to really cleanse ourselves from any external ideas. We don't need to discuss exactly what Salat is, because it seems to be a very central theme within the Quran. I'm not going to mention any verses. I have a number of them laid out throughout here, but just for the sake of brevity, we're just going to talk about, for example, 2014, I'm God, there is no God except me, so serve me and hold the Salat for my remembrance. So this is one of the verses. There are other 24:37, 29:45, and they go on. Next question, because it talks about the remembrance there, hold the Salat for my remembrance, what this remembrance is. What is this zikr? If we look at 15:9, we can see that the Quran itself is the reminder. It calls itself the zikr. So we can extend this to mean the zikr is in fact being mindful of the commands and lessons enshrined within the Quran. So then you go on, what's the purpose of zikr? We can look at the following verses, 8:2, 22:35 and 57:60. And we could be extrapolating a little bit further. We could say, for example, they're mainly about to be fearful of violating the commands of God, to humble the heart and make oneself submissive to the commands of God, and also straighten one's faith. So in a way we can say that Salat, the establishment of Salat, facilitates zikr and all that that entails. The ultimate aim of performing this zikr and Salat is success, or a state whereby you can realize your true potential by actually putting something into practice. If we look at 11:85 to 87, we can see that Prophet Shu'aib is asked if his Salat commands whether or not the people should forsake the worship practices their fathers had, and for the economics to be changed. In other words, what they should do with their money. The last point I think is also quite important here, because it shows that one of the results of Salat is that the way in which one uses their wealth is one of the things which Salat commands. It's important to think about that. Purely physical ritual is something which cannot tell you what to do. It's a ritual. You start it, you finish it, okay, it's done. Okay? There isn't really an interactive aspect or a learning aspect of actually gaining anything from doing something which is purely a mindset ritual. Using the Quranic guidelines to implement an economic order, for example, is the result of performing Salat. So therefore there is an aspect of going back to the Quran to find out what one does with their monies. Can you pass me the bowl, please?
Oh, sorry.
If we look at 29:45, thank you, we can see the word taha being used. Now this has been the same root as the word muntaha, which means end result. Therefore, a Salat is to refrain from all stinginess, lewdness, and also is to end behavior which is contrary to that enshrined within the reminder, the Quran. We can take this further. Establishment of Salat in one's life means that the individual reminds himself of God. He therefore becomes God conscious in his life so that he enters an optimal state for that individual. Each person is created different. My potential is different for anyone, yours for example. Likewise, a prescripted, laid out method for one person is not going to be as successful a means of realizing one's potential as something that you actually develop for yourself. The God consciousness can be taken further. Many of the attributes of God are mentioned in the Quran. These attributes are absolutes. You can't ever realize truly what it means to be the mercy. But we can be merciful in our lives and work that within our capacities. Again, it all comes down to how much of your potential you can actually truly realize. The reminder aspect of this, the zikr aspect, is extremely important. The Quran reminds oneself of what it means to be human. And I think that is probably the absolute key to all this. Our lives take over. We interact with people who may not have the same ideologies as us, so we can sometimes forget to be human, to be ourselves. For example, in 24:41, we are told that birds know their Salat and they glorify God. The birds don't need reminding. They follow their program. What is successful for a bird is a lot simpler than what is successful for a human being. For example, birds don't forget to feed their young. It's just practice, they just do it, you know. But they don't have complex social structures involving birds who are poorer than them, who can't fend for themselves, whereas as humans, of course, we do. And this, I think, is really important because there are people who are more successful. And I say successful in that way because success is measured different for different people. For me, my success is in different spheres. For example, there's the financial success that I have of running my own business and working hard. That gives me money to be able to go out and do things. But there's also the success of actually having a place in this world and being recognized for one's actions. And then there's also the success of what we're actually working towards, whether I'm actually involving myself in a manner which is in line with I term as the will of God. So again, we all have different aspects of success. You need to then move on to a phrase which is repeated at least 27 times along with Salat, okay, which is about zakat. And there are differing opinions of what zakat is. One is that it refers just to the act of self-purification, another is that it's based on economics, and that its money is used to ensure physical, mental, moral, intellectual development. However, there is another word which is used, and the word is infaq, and that's mentioned 8 times in Salat. And this refers to spending by those with plenty, and they willingly contribute their physical, mental, and financial resources for the development and betterment of those in need. In 70, 22 to 25, we can see that for those who establish Salat and Salim, there's an established right for those who are needy. Okay, there's an established right for those people. At the moment, I'm yet to make the direct link between Zakat and Salat by including the financial aspect. However, the infaq aspect does then bring the financial thing about Zakat into this. These items alone should be sufficient to show you how Salat is linked directly to the individual purification by use of the remembrance and spending one's wealth to make it a social thing. In this way, both the individual and the communities are taken care of. In summary, Salat is a practice of 1, use of zikr to understand how best to serve God by helping His creation. 2, use the zikr to remember what it means to be human, and it helps to shape our interactions with people around us. And 3, it helps us to maintain God consciousness, which stops the individual and the community from committing acts of indecency or wrongdoing. Now this aspect has been discussed many times and not all agree, and not all should, in my opinion. And I don't think that I totally agree with this concept at the moment either. So you may ask why I'm speaking about it. Well, the answer is simple. I don't believe that Salat is a one-dimensional concept that we can just pigeonhole. It's a lot more than this. As mentioned earlier, there are a multitude ways of getting to God, and this aspect of Salat is just one of the few. Depending upon how you read the different verses and put the verses together, the reason why the Quranists community hasn't come to an overall consensus and said, right, this is the way, is because there can't be one way. It's not meant to be just simply one way. It's meant for all of us to be able to take a look and see and apply how we can actually individually apply it in our communities. Man is a biological animal. We allow our lives to condition ourselves, so we need gently reminding. Being involved in a physical act is one way of involving the mind and the body at the same time. So this becomes an event in which the whole being is involved. Prior to this, I've just talked about Salat as not being something which is physical. But there is a physical aspect to this that we can also bring into it to assist us. So then you start questioning, is there a method? A ritual practice which helps us to achieve the state. And I believe that there is in fact an aspect of this which is broadly ritualized. I said broadly because God in His infinite wisdom has given us the broad strokes, the basic things that we need to do. There is unseen knowledge at play here. There are things that we still don't understand, and I don't think we can ever really understand until we've gained an understanding of what it means to be successful based off this. Each community can establish an agreed ritualistic manner which is in tune with that community. And the broad strokes of that being, for example, the concept of wudu. This is a physical and mental preparation and purification. Keep your golden focus, point of standing up, reciting the remembrance in an even, moderate tone, prostrating, for it to be done at both ends of the night, morning and night, and for it to be balanced. I often perform the ritual myself, using the Quran to lay out my day, and then at the end to remind myself if I've done something against the commands in the Quran to not do it, fix myself. In a way, I'm judging myself against the Quranic standard to see if I fit. The results are outstanding, and I would say that it helps me to make decisions, and that God consciousness flows throughout the day. There are times when it escapes the mind. We're all human beings today, but there are a lot of times when you're about to do something. No, that wouldn't give me the most positive outcome. So you start making calculated decisions in regards to how you're actually doing this. I think the important thing is how you go about doing it isn't really as important as the actual result of the Salat. If performing the physical ritual becomes the main reason, then in my opinion, the Salat is failed. It's been reduced to whistling and clapping and turning your faces to the east and the west. And I think, we can see this happening around us. I mean, the physical form is being carried out for a number of reasons. It probably started out with all good intentions, but slowly devolved into something that someone just has to do. Oh, I've got to go to mosque, it's time again. I need to do this X, Y, and Z, fulfill it in this particular manner. But I don't need to tell you that the reason that some people simply perform the ritual namaz not necessarily going to be the most successful of people. It's not really going to lead them to an inner peace. I sometimes use the ritual because it gives me peace, because it gives me that connection, and because it allows me to be anchored here and now. Because sometimes we can forget, and you start reading the Quran, you're like, wait, I've just made a link, amazing. Read through all this stuff, and you're like, hey, hold on a minute, I'm just a person. You know? When you've got the words of God in your hands, it's a very, very powerful feeling. And in my opinion, Salat is done to benefit the individual and the community. God does not need you to do it. You and I need to do it for us as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yasin.